Yeah, exactly. Nothing in the gate bias.
Well, if you've been following the Cup so far, you will know, and you're a British supporter that is, you will know it's been a difficult few days. The America's Cup has not gone the way that this team, INEOS Britannia, wanted it to so far. But, on the other side, Ben and the rest of the crew have been telling us for quite some time that this is about development, and they've been out there today on what has been a reserve day, out there testing. In fact, we've just been on the other side, out by the beach, watching them going around, doing tacks, doing jibes, and actually what was interesting is what they seemed to be concentrating on doing was pre-start manoeuvres. We have no idea, if I'm honest, what they've actually done to the boat, what changes they've made. They're never going to tell us, that's for sure. But what we can say is that when we watch them out on the beach, they're out there for an hour or so, or maybe a bit more, there was a lot of the circular movements that we've seen in their pre-starts before. A lot of that, a lot of time on distance runs to a start line, lots of tacking practice, lots of jibing practice, and basically an emphasis around manoeuvres. And what that tells me is not exactly rocket science, because we've seen it in so many of the races so far, is that what is becoming absolutely crystal clear is you have got to win the start. If you don't win the start, it is really hard, if not impossible, to get back in the game. And that means being confident about your manoeuvres, not slipping off the foils, not spinning out the rudder, and no doubt that's what they've been practicing today. We'll find out tomorrow. And it wasn't just us that was watching. Look who else was out there. Although there are strict rules governing the design of an AC-75 mast that has resulted in them becoming closer to a one design spar than ever before, there's still a fair bit of scope for designers. Deciding on the final laminate is one area, another is the fit out and detail of the spars. This means it's quite tricky to find out specific details on where AC mast design is heading. As you might expect, teams are quite keen to keep it to themselves. But it's a different story when it comes to the standing rigging. This is a one design area, so there are no secrets to be kept. Plus, given the incredible performance that these boats and their crews are now producing, with top speeds of over 55 knots, standing rigging is being taken right to the leading edge of design and manufacture. Future Fibres have been leaders in this field for many years, and are based just down the road in Valencia. So I caught up with Jonathan Duval to find out more about where the Cup is taking this technology. Our conversation started with the effect that removing the backstays has had on the current generation of Cup boats. And before long, we were talking about the areas that could increase performance even further.
So when the backstays are removed, you gain definitely drag, you gain in weight as well, because you remove material and you remove frontal area. But the loads that go through the rig remain similar. So you have to have caps that are higher, that are taking higher loads. And you need stiffer caps as well to hold the mast in a similar fashion. The shape of the sail, the dimension of the mast didn't change drastically from the AC-36 to the AC-37. So we needed to increase the cap's stiffness, and that therefore, and the loads, but that increased basically the dimension of the caps that went just bigger. So the frontal area and the weight of those caps obviously are bigger on the AC-37 versus the AC-36. Now the overall package is clearly lighter, and the overall package is not just lighter, but it as well generates less drag on the whole system. The mast is a rotating mast on those boats now, And this is what's mostly affect the rigging. And we have to take that in account. So there is some lashing system at the top of the attachment on the rigging, for example, to allow the mast to rotate but not twist the rigging, because the rigging is an elliptical rigging. It's an arrow-shaped rigging. If you start to twist it, obviously it will misalign with the wind angle or with the boat angle, or the boat axis, sorry. If you have a misalignment, you just generate more drag. So you always want really the rigging to be aligned with the wind in all situations. Ideally, and that is more thinking about an evolution, what you would want is to have a rigging that's aligned with the wind at all time, which is extremely complicated because we're talking about cables that are working at high loads, very high loads. I mean, we're talking about various tons here. And you to have a system that is easily interchangeable, or that you can basically rotate whilst you're sailing, with a cable that is slack on one hand or a cable that is under tension on one hand, with sailors that are on the boat dealing with all the stuff they're dealing at the same time, you can imagine that it's quite complex or almost impossible, probably. The America's Cup team right now are fighting against vibration now, because the more the cable vibrate, the more the cable enters in resonance, the more drag it generates as well in the flow. And it just gets even worse. It could even get very quickly worse than just the drag coefficient of the shape of the rigging, for example. So vibration, I think, is kind of the next big question. It is a question today and nowadays with those teams that they're trying to solve it and finding damper system or trying to find systems to avoid it. But I think it's the future in the rigging, and finding ways of avoiding vibration for the future, especially at those high speeds, will be another solution for the next problems, really.
That's really interesting. And is that why we see on the rigging, I'm just trying to think whether it was only when we had the backstays, but sometimes you see those tabs attached to the rigging.
That is exactly what so those tabs are here to stop the vibration. So it's the vibration is unavoidable. You cannot stop an element to vibrate. It's like a guitar chord or a bridge that enter in resonance. You know, we've all seen those videos on various platforms where you have massive failure. So what it's the goal of those little elements that are attached on the rigging is to change the frequency, the frequency point, let's say, or the mode of resonance that would happen on those riggings, on those cables. And if you can change, you basically, depending on the wind speed, so the speed of the boat, you can change the position. So it would not enter in resonance, for example, at a certain speed, but it would at another, depending on the wind angle or the wind speed, etc. So they're trying to fight against it, and they're making it happen, but you still need to use those little elements. So if you could get rid of those elements, it's less drag in the system as well. So there's always room for improvements. When the winds go through a standard yacht, you have a difference of wind speed between the leeward side and the windward side. This is due to the sail, this is due to the mast structure, etc. For the rigging, the drag that is generated by that depends on the wind angle and the wind speed, as I explained earlier. But obviously, you always have the differences of speed and of wind angle between the leeward side and the windward side. And this is something that we've been working on quite recently, actually. And you find out that it's always better to have the rigging aligned with the boat, completely aligned with the boat axis. Because if you start to play with the alignment of the rigging, nose in, nose out, for example, it would be good for one side, but not for the other one when you tack, and then it gets completely. It just generates more problems and more drag to the whole system. So we've been working on that quite a lot, and we've done a fair amount of analysis actually with North Design Service, some guys that are in the UK that we work with through our group, to try to understand what is the effect depending on the boats. And we've been playing with different sizes of boats. We've been playing with DP52, with 70-footer, even with Wally Shentos, to try to understand the effects of the ellipse shape, but the angle of the ellipse played on the boat, and then depending on the wind angle or what is going to be the course or what even going to be the race of the boat, you can predict what is going to be the whole drag generated just by the rigging, thanks to that. So we've been learning quite a lot there. And if you take in account as well the rotating rig, you can then play with the rigging. And this is something that is very recent, where can you rotate the rigging as well as the rig, which is something we haven't done so far. But we think it may be possible. So that then you can generate another step further, which for now is completely theoretical, but you could go another step further, which is you align the mast, but you align the rigging as well in each situation, which would be an enormous gain in terms of drag for the whole system. So the alignment of the cables with the wind would be quite a gain for sure, because it would reduce the drag. But I still think that the biggest gain that you would gain moving forward is the vibration topic, which if you can have rigging that do not vibrate, because the drag induced by vibration is not a double of the drag. It can be a 10th time more drag because of the vibration, which is, we're talking about going from a drag coefficient of 0.3, 0.4 to a drag coefficient of 2 or more than 2. And it's just get worse and worse the more it starts to vibrate, or the rigging when it starts to just jump around. And it's not just vibration due to resonance, it's induced vibration from the boat sailing, hitting waves, or the boat tacking, or the boat, or induced by the wind even that just goes around the rigging and generates some vortex shielding, you know? So you have all those complex parameters that you have to take into account. And if we could avoid the vibration or dampen the rigging as fast as possible, you would reduce the drag on the whole system massively. And this, for us, we're working on that those days. This is the future, because that if you gain that knowledge and you find a way to solve that, you would gain speed on most of the rigs.